And so I want to start by us just doing some quick introductions. So your name and the pronouns that you use. And I always forget to actually think of a question. That's like the last thing I think of. Um, what's something you learned that you didn't know before? Something you learned from the presentations that you didn't know? And I will ask you keep it just like one sentence so we can be quick and have lots of time for conversation. So my name is Madison. My pronouns are she, her, and I learned that I might need to check my apartment for mold because a lot of the things that you were talking about people experience frequently, I kind of experience, and I've been thinking about it recently. So this made me think maybe I should actually check my space for mold. And so I'm going to pass it on to Zach Casman, and then you can pass it on to the next person.
Hi, good evening. My name is Zach Casman. My pronouns are he, him, his. Can't remember all the prompts, but I live in the Tower Grove South neighborhood now, and I learned. I'm gonna get them mixed up now. If it was I think it was the safe allowable lead levels being at 15 parts per billion. I thought that was new to me. Thanks. And I'll pick. Are we? I guess Terry is the one next to me. Does that work?
You can do anyone. It's fine.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know if. Yeah, fine. Terry, thanks.
Hi, my name is Tara Roque. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I learned a lot about lead in schools. That's not something we had focused on in the report. We had focused mostly on issues with different neighborhoods. And am I frozen? No? Okay. Everyone froze, so I assumed I was too. I had not been aware of that, and I really enjoyed learning it. Well, I guess enjoy is the right word to use when you're talking about lead in schools. I was interested and saddened to learn it, I should say. And I would like to turn this over to Caroline.
Hi, I'm Carolyn, she, her, her. I learned the difference between visually the paint peeling between lead paint and
latex,
regular other non-lead paint. Can't think of the name of it right now. I had never. When I saw those two pictures, I certainly said, "Oh yeah, those are different." And I've seen both those kind of patterns, but I didn't know what it meant. So that was really good. And I'm a volunteer with the Sierra Club. I do live in St. Louis County in U City. That's kind of where I'm coming from here.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Lena.
Oh, and I go on to, I pick the next person.
Yeah, you can.
Amir, pronouncing that right?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I'm Amir, she, her, hers. I just enjoyed the presentation. I kind of got a little bit of stuff from each of them, things that I didn't know or were kind of amazed to hear. So I can't really see the next person. I guess whoever would be next in line.
Yeah, I'll say Lena or Lena, however you say. I'm sorry if I mispronounced.
You actually crushed it. Good job. My name's Lena. She, her, hers. I'm actually in Vermont. I'm a senior, and I'm researching environmental racism impacts on the youth and our future generations. So this is a really informative perspective because, I mean, in my public school, I remember dreading drinking from the school water because it always tasted like either blood or pennies. So with that being said, knowing that there are regulations and like you mentioned, Vermont being one of the states, woohoo! But with that being said, I don't know, I just really opened my eyes to a lot of things that, like, because we're making a documentary on it, so we want to get more perspectives. And in New England, that's the only perspective I've gotten so far. So thank you for sharing, everyone. Zach, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so again, I'm Zach Kalinowski. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm here with the Interdisciplinary Environmental Clinic. neighborhood is de Bolivar. Yeah, I kind of, with Carolyn, I learned the difference between the two kinds of paint, and definitely learned that I grew up in a house with lead-based paint. Didn't know that before I saw those pictures. So it was eye-opening. And I'll send it down to Maxie.
Hi, my name is Maxie. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and thank you. What did I learn? I learned that there's like lead and mold everywhere, and it was kind of like, I thought I was just special for having it in my house, but like everyone's got it in their house, especially in like my neighborhood. So it's kind of like eye-opening to see like the impact at a more larger perspective. And let me see.
I think it's just Michaeline left, but I think Michaeline actually has to hop off. So I don't know if you had time to say anything quick, Michaeline, but it's not.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I have to hop off in just a moment, but I'm Michaeline. I use she, her pronouns. I live in the Shaw neighborhood area. And one thing I shared in the chat that I didn't know from Zach's presentation, that it was possible to file a mold complaint with the city. I have personally filed a complaint with my landlord about my personal apartment of a big kind of leak, which most likely has mold behind the walls. And I didn't know that action step with the city. So I appreciate that personal knowledge. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, so I definitely want to hop right into the discussion questions. So first, just kind of get us started, want to ask if someone or someone you know live in a place with lead or mold, how has that impacted you or them, or stories that you've heard, and like what are things that would have been helpful for people in those moments?
Well, I'll start us off maybe to get the juices going. In drafting, in putting together the report, the clinic spoke with a number of people that suffered with issues with mold. And we spoke with one woman who moved into her house and she didn't know what was going on. But it seemed like every week either one of her children was ending up in the ER. And they could not figure out why. It turned out in the back of a closet up there in a dark corner, there was a huge patch of mold growing, but they couldn't see it because it was dark in the closet. And that's why they were getting sick. The landlord wouldn't fix it. They ended up having to move, lost their security deposit, everything. But they stopped having to go to the ER. And it was something just so little as a little patch of mold in the back of a closet that was sending her children to the ER.
Wow. Thank you for saying that, Tara.
I don't personally know anybody who's had problems with lead or mold, but I'm sure there's tons of people that do, given that, especially with lead, I'll speak to that more. The average, like the housing stock in St. Louis is pretty old. I think the average age of like all the housing stock in the city of St. Louis is around like 1920 something. So that means the vast majority of the houses in the city probably, are going to probably have lead-based paint, either as being a surface level paint or, unpainted under multiple coats. So chances are, especially on like surfaces like window paint, like window frames and everything, where there's like heated impact, which creates dust. I'm sure there's like tons of people who have lead exposure and have no idea, and it takes a long time for those to show up.
Well, if it gives you any solace, as long as the lead is encapsulated, it's not a problem. So my house was built in the 1960s, so young for St. Louis, but it was built in the 1960s, and I have lead paint in there somewhere. But I have the ability to keep, I have the financial ability to repaint when things start chipping. And as long as you repaint and you keep it encapsulated, it is not a problem. As long as you don't start chipping away at it and trying to lick your walls. But as long as it's encapsulated, you're fine. Once it's exposed, if you see that sort of alligator print of chipping paint, that's when it becomes a problem, and that's when you need to be careful as to how you encapsulate it. Because if you sand it and then you breathe in the dust, you're getting lead dust. But you can't not sand it because it's chipping away like alligator print. So you just need to deal with it safely. Once it's encapsulated behind all that, you're fine.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Zach and Tara. Anyone else? I know for me, I have a friend and his mom. They lived in a house that had mold somewhere, and they didn't realize until they had like an inspection and everything when they first moved in. It wasn't found, and then his mom kept getting really, really sick and couldn't figure out why for a while, and had like just lots of like wild symptoms and stuff, and found out that there was a lot of mold and couldn't afford to fix it, and that meant that basically it had to like foreclose on that house and everything, because it's like if you own that, like what are you going to do? And not everyone like has the ability to have the best credit or be able to take out home equity loans or all this stuff, like that's not there. And so ended up losing the house, which put them in a really bad financial position, but also she was really sick and ended up having to like stop working as much and all this stuff. So it was just like really, really debilitating situation. And I'll just kind of ask along with it, because even if we haven't had the personal experience with it, like we know that it exists, it's real. Like what are the steps we can begin to take? Like what is it, what's it going to look like? I think we've talked a lot in these types of meetings about how there could be like kind of direct action steps to address the problem like right now, the people being impacted by it right now in those moments, but also like some systemic changes that might need to happen to make sure that this problem doesn't like pervade the way it does. So what are some of the things that we think could kind of help with this kind of at that maybe direct level, as well as potentially at a systemic level with lead and or mold?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hey, I apologize that I didn't hear the entire mold presentation. My name is Amir, and I actually work for St. Louis City. I'm an environmental health officer, and one of the complaints that our division does get is mold complaints, and we handle those by phone. The city does not have any ordinances against mold. When people do put in a complaint for mold, and I get them probably, I would say, at least.
Oh, you just got muted. You're right, as you were saying how often you get the mold complaints. You're still muted.
Madison, are you host? Can you make me co-host? I know I can. I think I can force unmute her.
I'm a co-host also.
Tap the three dots next to my name and name me. Oh, Amir's off. She's off.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, Amir, sorry, I don't know if you know, you dropped off right when you're about to say how often you get the mold complaints.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I get mold complaints probably 1 or 2 each week from the wards that I represent in the city as an environmental health officer. And the complaints often will reference having the kids having asthma or having breathing problems, and that the landlord won't do anything. But we handle those only by phone. We do not go out and investigate mold complaints, the health department, because our city doesn't have a lab at all to do any type of testing for any type of mold. So what we're instructed to do is to refer all mold complaints to the building division. That we instruct the citizen to contact the Citizen Service Bureau again and let them know that they need a building inspector, because the building division does have ordinances that they can cite for the conditions that lead to mold, to the water intrusion, whether it be leaky roof, gutters, piping. But the health department, we have no teeth as far as mold because there are no ordinances in the city. So something that we could possibly do, which I've talked to my supervisor about, is to lobby our alder persons to get some type of ordinance. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that would be a long-term goal, because again, we don't test for mold. So I mean, there's thousands of different types of mold, and there's no way for the city to say definitively, okay, yes, this is the type of mold that can cause you respiratory issues, or this type of mold is making you sick. we don't do anything other than send out a flyer from the CDC about how to properly clean the mold using basically bleach water. And yeah, the health department has no teeth for mold in the city. It's basically just punt the ball to the building division.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting and important because I think like that's huge. I think I would just assume that the city had some sort of ordinance about it or something.
No, not.
Do we know if does the county have ordinances around it? Just curious. It's fine if we don't know.
I haven't looked into that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see if like that, because especially if, you know, you already have a model there and see it's done in the county, why can't we do it here in the city? So that's definitely an avenue. And I think also, Mira, even just hearing you speak out of that, something we also probably need is just more clarity and understanding around like what happens when you have mold and you lodge these complaints, like who it, you know, people need to know that there's not this ordinance here, and maybe more people need to know that it's kind of like going to the buildings division as well. So I think like also lack of information out there. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
It's my understanding that a building inspector can walk in, see an entire wall full of mold and not be able to do anything about it. Now, if there are other code violations that are causing the mold, then the inspector can cite those violations, force the landlord to fix, or not force, just fine the landlord until
Right.
the landlord fixes those violations.
Right,
And then, yeah, and then the homeowner can come in and clean it with bleach water or hire someone to clean it. But
Right.
the mold itself is too bad, so sad.
Yeah. Don't like that.
Did I say that correctly, Amir?
I think so. Yeah, I think Terry, you cut off a tiny bit at the end, but yeah. So I think a big thing we're hearing is just like legislation. Like, I mean, the main thing I hear when I hear that there's like no accountability anywhere, and then like I know from people that don't have money, so there's no sort of fund, I guess, anywhere or something, or people can, you know, request assistance, like how maybe you have like heat, you know, and air conditioning assistance you can find in places. Like these are things we need to be organizing around and really pushing, because they're probably not going to change it on their own.
Right.
Anyone else have any other thoughts just about some of the ways that we can start tackling this more? I know we're kind of about to hop out of the group and back into the main discussion.
Well, this is Carolyn. The other angle is folks who you know, purchase a home, or when you rent. I mean, shouldn't there be some obligation to report, especially the lead paint status? That's been such a long-standing issue. Is there some requirement that you can't sell a home until there's been some definitive evaluation of whether there is lead paint, especially if it's an older home, especially?